Hi everybody, this is Tim. It's July 14th, 2009, and it's been exactly 3 years since my mother's passed away. So, this was my mom, and this is her now. 3 years ago, she had a lot of medical problems going on, and she took pain pills for it. When all her medical problems were okay, she was still addicted to the pain pills. So she took too many pills one day, and she fell asleep. We took her to the hospital. They hooked her up to some machines, and they were pumping out the medicine, and she was kind of okay. And it was in Stillwater, so then the doctor said, well, I'll give her some more medicine to help her. So he gave her more medicine, and I think she got worse because she fell back asleep. And then we took her to the hospital in Tulsa, St. Francis. It had been maybe a week and a half. We were in nothing but hospitals, and finally, there was just something about this night, just something that was telling me something's not right. I stayed up all night long on July the 13th, and I just watched everybody else around me fall asleep, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, and I was just working on a jigsaw puzzle. It took my mind off of everything. I was just putting the pieces together, and I almost got the whole thing completed. It was like 3,000 or something like that, and I started to see the sun come up, and then I heard the phone ring, so I answered it. It was my brother's ex-girlfriend who lived in Tulsa, and she said, I'm going to come see you, and I was like, okay, because I needed some comfort, and she came, and we went and ate breakfast. It was pancakes or something like that, and she just said, well, what are you going to do? What do you think is going to happen? And I said, well, I don't want to move back to my dad's. I mean, the doctors are saying it's not looking really good at all, but, I hadn't cried the entire time. I kept it in. My mom was always a very strong person. She said, don't be weak. She said, you have to be strong. She said, don't cry until I'm dead. And I said, okay. So, when the doctor said that she couldn't get into the liver foundation and have a liver donated to her, that meant she was going to die. And everybody in my family just started crying, and I had to keep it together. I held everybody's hand, and I said, we need to pray. I said, we have to pray. We can't give up hope. I was like, she's not dead yet. She's still there. There's still hope. So we all prayed, and I didn't cry. So then after breakfast, we went upstairs. Everybody was awake, and the doctor said there was no hope. There was no point in keeping her here because she was gone. So it was me, my older brother, my other brother, and my mom's boyfriend. We were all in this one room, and my brother said, what are we going to do? And I said, Mom was a very strong person. It's like she wouldn't want to be held here. She wouldn't want to be kept prisoner. She'd want to be let go. So my mom's boyfriend just nodded his head. My other brother just nodded his head, and it was a good 5 minutes of just awkward silence. And my bigger brother said, well, okay. We got everybody together. We all gathered outside her room, and they started taking her off the life support. And it's a sound I will never forget. When they pulled the tubes out of her throat, it was such a terrible sound that I don't think anyone should ever hear. And then a doctor came out. He had 2 nurses with him who had all the equipment, and a nurse stopped, and she put her arm on my shoulder and said, you not have to go in there if you don't want to. And I said, I want to. So we all get in there. Everybody surrounds her bed, my cousins, my aunts, my brothers, everybody. And everybody just starts bawling. They just start crying. And I couldn't keep it in anymore. I started crying too. I went and I held her hand, and I just squeezed it, and I said, Mama, you gotta come back. I said, you can't leave me. I'm only 14. It's like I just got back here. I have only been here for maybe a year. I was like, you cannot leave me. You have to raise me. It's like, I can't go back to Dad's. I was like, no, you have to stay. And when I grabbed her hand, it was so cold. It was so stiff. and you could tell it was dead. And I just put my head on his shoulder and I just said, "Don't leave me." When I put my head on her shoulder, I remember the day before she took too much medicine. I was sitting on the couch watching TV when she walked in, and she sat on the couch and she was going through her purse. I looked over at her, and then she looked at me and smiled and said, "I love you, Bubba." I said, "I love you too, Mom." And then she looked at me again and said, "I love you, Bubba." And I said, "I love you too, Mom." And then she just looked at me with a big grin and said, "I love you, Bubba." And I said, "I love you too, Mom." She said, "We're going to have a good day." I said, "We're going to go to the movies. We're going to see that new Superman movie you've been wanting to see." She said, "Then we can go eat, and then we can go work off all the calories we've eaten at the gym." And I said, "That sounds good to me, Mom." And she said, "Okay." Then I was pulled back to the reality of my head on her chest and holding her hand, and I said, "Mama, we have to spend our last day together." I said, "You can't leave me. It's like we gotta go see Superman, we gotta go eat. It's like we just gotta spend our last day together." And then I looked up, and her face was so pale. Her eyes started to open, and they were just bloodshot red eyes. And it was no longer my mother. It was no longer the woman I'd always known. It was just a dead, lifeless body. And I said, "Mama, you can't leave me." So then I put my hand over her eyelids and I shut them. And it's something I will never forget. After I closed her eyes, I gave her a kiss on the cheek. And I said, "I gotta go, Mama. I can't stand seeing you like this anymore." I let go of her stiff, cold hand, and I walked out. And not a day goes by where I don't think of her. Not a day goes by where I don't think, what if Mom were still here? Not a day goes by where I don't stop wishing that any 14-year-old on this earth should be without a mother. And that any child out there right now needs to appreciate the mother they have. So, if you're watching this, stop the video and go hug your mother. Because I can't do that. And appreciate her while she's around. And just be happy that you have a mom. Because not everybody's so fortunate. Hopefully there's going to be a day where I die too, and I can go to heaven, and we will get to spend our last day together. Until then, I can only keep telling everybody, cherish what you have. Because now I've been motherless for 3 years.